Hello and welcome to a demonstration for a day in the life of a Teamcenter analyst. Before we get started with today's demonstration, I have a few topics that we need to review. So for today's demo, we'll be working within our Simcenter suite of tools. For data and process management, we'll be using our Teamcenter application. And for CAE simulation, we'll be using our Simcenter 3D and NX Nastran applications. We've identified 5 stages in the CAE simulation management maturity process. I just want to briefly highlight those stages. Stage 1 is where companies aren't managing their simulation data, and the only data that they are managing is CAD. Stage 2 is where CAE and CAD data are essentially manually imported and exported, and there's no simulation process management. Stage 3 is where we'll be working with the demo today. This is where simulation applications are integrated and the data from those applications are captured and managed within Teamcenter. We can integrate third-party software as well as our own Simcenter 3D product, and we manage the data models as well as the traceability within those data models. We can also automate and execute in discrete simulation processes within stage 3. Stage 4 is where we're building upon stage 3, but we're integrating all of our simulation tools, and we can execute end-to-end simulation processes, and then of course we're collaborating across teams within this stage. And then our 5th stage is where we're building upon stages 3 and 4, and stage 5 is where we're automating all the processes. So we're standardizing and optimizing the simulation tools, where we have discrete steps for the execution of a simulation, and then we can see inside the simulation process with some type of dashboard or some type of CAE status visibility for projects. So stages 3, 4, and 5 can all be executed within our Teamcenter application. And again, we'll be working within stage 3 today for our demo, where Simcenter 3D and NX are integrated with Teamcenter. And then finally, before we start with our demo, we need to understand the data model that's going to be managed for us with the Simcenter or NX integration with Teamcenter. So when we're building the simulation within Simcenter, we're working from left to right here. And the first step is to identify the CAD item. Usually this CAD item is owned by a different user with a different role. And most often it's frozen data. So the analyst doesn't have access to the model to be able to make any type of manipulations. So we offer a CAE geometry data that we can generate from the CAD item, and within that CAE geometry we can defeature the geometry, or we can do things like add mid-surfaces or remove fillets or whatnot. Once we're done with the CAE geometry, we'll generate a CAE model from that. Within the CAE model is where we'll generate our mesh from the geometry, add any types of nodes and elements we may need on top of the mesh, and then add any type of properties such as material data or thickness or whatever. Once we're finished with the CAE model, we'll generate our CAE analysis. Within that CAE analysis, we're going to apply our boundary conditions, set up our solutions, generate our input decks, and then once we solve with our application, we can look at the raw results. And then finally, once we finish with the CAE analysis, we can generate a CAE results type, and within that CAE results, we can share reports, images, animations, or whatever type of data you need to share within the organization. Okay, so this is our simulation data model. So a day in the life of a Teamcenter analyst. So for today's demo, we have 2 users. We have Dave Designer and Andy Analyst. For part 1, Andy Analyst is going to perform a simulation on Dave Designer's bracket. And for part 2, Andy Analyst is going to update his simulation based on a design change made by Dave Designer. So part 1, Andy Analyst is tasked to perform a modal analysis on Dave Designer's bracket. So let's go through that process. So right now we're logged in as Dave Designer, and we're looking at NX as Dave Designer, and we'll open his bracket just so we can review it. So Dave Designer's bracket has a center rib with 4 holes, and it looks like a pretty simple L bracket. Okay. So now we'll go over to Analyst, who's been asked to perform a modal analysis on that bracket. So we will open Dave Designer's bracket. Notice that when I perform the file open option, and I'll do it again, file open. This essentially looks the same as Simcenter 3D on your operating system, or whether you're working with Simcenter 3D integrated with Teamcenter. So almost identical. So let's find Dave's bracket. Okay, there is his bracket, and yeah, it's owned by Dave Designer, so you can see this in under properties, and you can get a quick preview image where you can see 4 holes in the rib. So we'll go ahead and open that bracket. And yeah, that's his bracket. So let's perform a simulation on that, and we're going to perform a modal analysis. So we'll start with the application and generate our new CAE model and CAE analysis. Again, this process is very similar to how you do it in native NX. I'll take the defaults. So here we're going to generate the CAE model, and this is going to be an NX Nastran analysis. And we won't use the CAE model, or sorry, CAE geometry. This step is where we could actually choose an option for that, but we're not going to for this demo. And then we're also going to use NX Nastran CAE analysis, so we'll take the defaults for that as well. Okay, so we'll walk through the process, and we're going to generate a modal analysis. So we need to pick the correct solution type, and we're going to tell Nastran to give us 3 modes. Okay, so we're going to walk back to the CAE model and generate our mesh on our bracket. We'll take all those defaults in that menu. Once that's finished, we'll make sure that we add our material properties to the mesh. And I'll take one of our library materials. And once I'm finished with that, we'll move over to the CAE analysis. And for the modal analysis, I just need to apply some constraints to these holes. Okay, so once I'm finished and I've generated my CAE model and my CAE analysis, I'm going to save everything. So we'll be saving everything in Teamcenter. Then we'll perform our solution. So Simcenter 3D is going to write the Nastran input deck and then launch the Nastran solve. And then once Nastran finishes, we'll get a message stating so, and then we can look at our results. So we'll close the windows from the analysis. And before I move on to post-processing, I'm going to go ahead and save everything. And when I save everything, it's also going to prompt me to save the Nastran output files as well. So all this data is going to be saved in Teamcenter. So we'll import everything. Once that's saved, we're going to go in and post-process the data. We'll take a look at the displacement of the mode shapes. Within post-processing, we can just quickly animate mode shapes if we want, and then just quickly kind of scroll through and view them. Once we're done post-processing, we'll generate a JT results file that we can use to view the results if we so choose. So I'll do that here. I'll generate a managed JT results file for all three mode shapes. And we'll give it a name here, bracket modes 3. And hit OK, and then we'll generate that JT file. And once I'm done with this, I can save everything one last time. Once that's finished, then I'm done with part 1 of the demo. Okay, we'll close all parts. Now that we're done with that, we can move on to part 2. And part 2 is where Dave Designer is going to make a change to the bracket design. We'll save it, and we'll ask Andy to update his simulation and perform a new modal analysis to reflect the design change. So we'll go back to Dave Designer, and we will open up his bracket. And here's where we'll make a change. So we're going to make an obvious change. We'll delete these holes. And let's move that rib because we deleted those holes. Okay, finish with that. So we'll do a file, save as a new revision, and we'll take the defaults. So this is going to be revision B, and we'll hit OK to save the new design. Okay, done with that. Close everything, and we'll move back over to Andy Analyst. So the first step of Andy Analyst will be to open up his simulation. So let's do that. Here's Andy's last simulation. And before I do that, I want you to notice that my current assembly load options is set to latest working. So when I open this simulation, so I'll open the CAE analysis, which will open up the CAE model. And when those two things happen, Simcenter knows to go ahead and load the latest working revision of the bracket. So we should get Dave Designer's latest working revision loaded into Simcenter. So I'll go ahead and do that. And so here you'll notice that we have our CAE analysis revision A and our bracket FEM revision A, and then our new bracket. So let's go ahead and load that. And we'll go over to our CAE model, and you'll notice that the geometry is already updated. So we've got the rib already moved over, and our update icon has become highlighted. So basically Simcenter 3D is requesting that we perform some type of update. So let's go ahead and do that. And notice that our mesh will change, and we should lose these holes. And there we have an updated mesh, and our so that it's reflecting the design change. Okay, so we'll move back over to the simulation. Before we do is solve this with NX Nastran, we want to save the CAE analysis and the CAE model to the next revision so we don't overwrite our existing ones. So let's do a file, save as, and we will perform a save as on these two, the CAE analysis and the CAE model. We'll take the defaults and we'll hit OK. As soon as that's finished, now that we've completed that, we'll go ahead and perform a solution on the updated geometry. One thing I want to verify is that our boundary condition is still there, and yes, it's updated properly. So we can go ahead and solve this model. Okay, so Nastran's solving using the input file that Simcenter 3D generated. Once this finishes, we can review the results within Simcenter and generate our JT results file. But before we move over to post-processing, let's do a save. So we'll save everything. And again, we'll save the master and output files as well. Once that's finished, move over to post-processing. And let's do the same thing where we'll plot the displacement plot of that mode shape. We can animate it if we want. And we can look at the other two. Okay, last step like we did last time. Let's generate a new JT results file. We'll name this something different. Bracket B, modes 3. And we'll do modes 1 through 3 displacement, and we'll save that JT file. And now that we're done, we've completed our second part of the demo where we've updated our simulation to Dave Designer's bracket. Last step would be to save everything. Back to Teamcenter. Okay, now that we're done, we're going to close out of everything. All right, so that ends our part 1 and part 2 of our demonstration. Just some things I'd like to review. For today's demo, we're working in stage 3. So where do you want to go with your CAE management maturity? Do you want to go into stage 3 and work that way, or do you want to get to stage 5? Regardless, Teamcenter offers all the applications and integrations you need to go from stage 3 to stage 5. Within the stage 3, and whatever stage you're in, Teamcenter CAE data model provides the critical Teamcenter relationships needed from the CAD master through the CAE analysis, and that's delivered in the out-of-the-box Simcenter 3D integration. Today I demonstrated the role and process of an analyst where we use Simcenter 3D integrated with Teamcenter. Even though you saw us using Simcenter or NX only, you didn't have to see Teamcenter within the demo today because you really don't have to integrate or work with Teamcenter when you're doing your daily jobs. Also, hopefully you noticed that the Simcenter 3D connection to Teamcenter was nearly seamless. You didn't see Teamcenter today. You saw me working with NX, and I was basically seamlessly saving data as we are working through all the processes. And regardless of whether I'm working in Simcenter 3D on the OS or within Teamcenter, it has the same look and feel, and it has the same simulation process. And then finally, you should have noticed that even though there are design changes that happen during the life cycle of a CAD item, that the integration with Teamcenter through Simcenter 3D offers you tools that you can verify that you're working with the correct design iteration. So today you saw me start with Dave Designer's first bracket, and then we updated to Dave Designer's second bracket, and we could visually see the different designs within Simcenter 3D. All right, well, thank you for watching our demonstration today, and I appreciate you using our Simcenter tools. Thank you.